I'm very excited about what this session brings to our symposium. It's a little bit of a twist. For the last several meetings, we've discussed neurotrauma and a lot of the work that's done in what we would consider the natural sciences here in the College of Arts and Sciences at UNC Chapel Hill. And there's been a big effort over the last few years to create something called Synergy Unleashed, where we're converging different areas of the college with each other to kind of share in some commonalities and address some of today's problems. And today is a classic example of that opportunity in this type of a public forum, where we're converging the humanities and social sciences with the work that we're doing within the natural sciences. I'm very proud to partner with the Center for the Study of the American South in providing this afternoon's keynote session with you that's featuring Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Dr. Micky Collins, who you heard speak earlier today. So I'm also very pleased to introduce and welcome Dr. Melinda Maynard Lowry, who's an assistant professor here at UNC Chapel Hill and who directs the Center for the Study of the American South, and she will be introducing our keynote speakers and also guiding that moderation discussion. So thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. What a nice full house. My name is Melinda Lowry, as Jason said, and we at the Center for the Study of the American South are so pleased to sponsor this portion of the Matthew Gfeller Center's annual symposium. We're grateful to the Gfeller Center's directors, Jason and of course Kevin Guskowitz, their staff, and to the Gfeller family for their work to make treatment and healing a reality for athletes and their families. The research that we conduct at the Center for the Study of the American South focuses on the arts and humanities. And you might be asking, what does the arts and humanities have to do with racing and neuroscience? But in fact, the humanities connection to NASCAR, of course, is through its rich history in the South. But really the future of the auto industry, both in North and South Carolina, in technical innovation, in manufacturing, and in media, is also in the South. So we feel that we should prepare for that future by listening and learning from one another. Those listening and learning pieces are the core aspects of humanities research and teaching. The health of the athletes who bring that industry such visibility and excitement is also a humanities conversation, because when we discuss health, we also elevate the power of listening. Chancellor Guskowitz and Dean Terry Rhodes have supported our work to bring together the humanities, science, and the future of the South, and I'm very grateful for their leadership. Now, today's speakers are two excellent listeners, maybe both in different ways, people who actually solve problems by listening, both on the racetrack and in the doctor's office. Dale Earnhardt Jr. is an American professional stock car racing driver, champion team owner, businessman, and television analyst for NBC Sports Group. He began his racing career at 17 years of age with his dad, Dale Earnhardt Sr. He won consecutive NASCAR Busch Series championships in 1998 and 1999, and the Daytona 500 in 2004 and 2014. Earnhardt was named NASCAR's most popular driver for a record 15 consecutive seasons. In 2008, Earnhardt Jr. penned Racing to the Finish, My Story, with ESPN scribe Ryan McGee, detailing his battle with multiple concussions that affected his life, his livelihood, and his future in the sport. The book has earned critical acclaim, and it hit the bestseller lists from the New York Times, USA Today, and the Wall Street Journal. Dale lives in Mooresville, North Carolina, with his wife Amy and their daughter Isla Rose. Dr. Micky Collins serves as director and a founding member of the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center Sports Medicine Concussion Program. Dr. Collins and his UPMC program colleagues attract patients including youth, high school, collegiate, and pro athletes with concerns about safe return to play and clinical management and treatment of sports concussion. He has been the lead author or co-author on more than 110 peer-reviewed research articles and has delivered more than 450 presentations at national and international scientific meetings. Dr. Collins currently has upward of $10 million in funding for his research efforts from entities including the NFL GE Head Health Challenge, the National Institute of Health, Major League Baseball, and the United States Army Special Operations Command. He is co-founder of IMPACT, stands for Immediate Post-Concussion Assessment and Cognitive Testing, a widely used computerized sports concussion evaluation system. A graduate of the University of Southern Maine with a bachelor's degree in psychology and biology in 1991, Dr. Collins earned a master's degree in psychology in 1995 and a doctorate degree in clinical psychology in 1998 at Michigan State University. And I'd like to ask them both to come forward. Thank you. We are going to have some conversation. Dale will kick it off for us. We'll have some conversation until about 1:20 or so. You'll see mics. There's one here in the center and one towards the back. If you have questions that you'd like to address to these two gentlemen, please do just come forward to the mic and we'll start taking questions at about 1:20 or so. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I have to say that today, me and Micky Collins are best friends. And I didn't know Micky Collins in 2012. Never met Micky before. But today, I call him often. We stay in touch. Wherever he goes to talk about his research, I want to go and talk about the work that we did together. And so we spent a lot of time together. But in 2012, I'd never met Micky. And I was a race car driver, been racing for many, many years, had plenty of crashes. Crashing is just a fact of being out on the racetrack and the risk you assume when you get in the car. And I'd had my bell rung and all kinds of things, whatever analogy you want to use, multiple times, just like a lot of drivers. And we shook it off and would go to the next track, sometimes brag about it, laugh about it. And that was just the mental approach to getting hurt and concussions, broken bones, driving with the flu, whatever. It was being tough and being stubborn. Eventually, I had this really, really bad crash at a test in Kansas. We were testing tires, and I was out there running by myself really, really fast, probably 220 miles an hour at the end of the straightaway, and the right front tire exploded just as I turned down into turn one. And I lost all control of the car at that point, and the car just veered straight into the wall at about 180 miles an hour. And the impact was just indescribable. It's just, it's the craziest thing that I've ever experienced, and just the most violent experience that I've ever been a part of. And I was hurt, and I knew it immediately, and I got down to the garage, and the people on my team that know me really well were looking at me going, "Man, you do not look okay. Your eyes, your demeanor, your expressions, your mannerisms are not you." And I got terribly nauseous and had a real bad episode of I had never experienced this before. I didn't know what was happening to me. But my habit had been to, figure out how to get it to go away, walk it off, wait for it to go away, whatever had to happen. I never crossed my mind to go to the doctor. And so I waited, and I drove. I raced the next weekend, the weekend after that, still sick, still foggy, still dizzy. And finally, about 4 weeks, I woke up one morning and I felt great. And I thought, okay, I'm beyond this problem. I'm beyond this issue. And if I just be careful, take a little more time on the racetrack to make my decisions, I can avoid having this incident happen again, and maybe I can put a little distance between me and that problem, and everything's going to be fine. And I crashed again in that same weekend, 4 weeks later. And all those problems and symptoms that I had at that crash in that test in Kansas came right back. And I was so angry, and I had trouble controlling my emotions. But it scared me that I had layered these concussions together so closely. And I had been reading, because it was so prevalent in the news, about the NFL and players and how they were dealing with these concussions and the cautions that we needed to take about putting having concussions so close together. I'd been reading this information, and I think I was consuming quite a bit more of it actually because of what I was going through during those 4 weeks. I wanted to know more. I was trying to kind of find the easy answer. And having this all happen in this period of time made me reach out to a doctor. Dr. Petty is his name in Charlotte, North Carolina. He's kind of the racing doctor. Anytime my father was ill or had a problem, anytime any of the other drivers were ill, they would reach out to Mr. Petty. Mr. Petty sent me to Micky, and Micky saved my life. I had lost a lot of, ability to think clearly, to control my emotions or make decisions, and I didn't know whether those were ever going to come back, and he fixed it. And so, I was really happy about that experience, and he did it really quickly. This happened in a couple of weeks. I was, with the right tools and the right research and doing all the things that I needed to do that I'd never done before, I healed this issue really quickly. And I got back to the race car. Micky told me I couldn't drive for a couple of weeks, which is fine. And
it really wasn't Dale, actually. Yeah.
But the problem with that is that I thought, okay, I went to Micky, and Micky taught me how to handle this problem and handle these issues, and now I got it. Now I know what to do. Anytime it happens in the future, I got the tools. Micky gave me the tools. I know what to do. So for the next, let's say, 5 years, anytime I crashed, most often, anytime I crashed, I would get sick. And in my mind, I thought, I'm going to utilize the tools that I was given in 2012 when I first visited Micky, and if I'm feeling well enough by Wednesday or Thursday, I'm good to go. That was that sounds ridiculous, and it was. But the way I had sort of seasoned my brain and trained myself, and I was going to handle this. I knew what I needed to do, and I could handle it. And I took notes in my phone, on my notes app, about every crash that I had, how I felt immediately after the wreck, how I felt Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, because as a concussed person, I couldn't remember Wednesday what Monday felt like. But if I read the notes, I would know. And I could also see, well, I'm getting better, right? I'm going to be fine. This is great. I'm going to go race again. And I did this for 4 or 5 years. And all I was doing really was sending myself down the rabbit hole. And one day, we all think about concussions. I'm going to let you talk in a minute. I just have a lot to say.
I'm so mad at you right now, Dale. It's not even funny. Yeah.
I'm going to say everything he wants to say. We think about concussions, and we always talk about how you think that a concussion comes from being hit, right? Like being hit on the football field or in a car crash. If you have symptoms, they happen immediately. That's what we all assume, and that's not exactly true. And I've been racing for 4 or 5 years, wrecking here and there, and dealing with issues that would go away. But one day I woke up and I had symptoms or had things going on that I'd never had before. I had problems with my balance and problems with my words, finding words, completing sentences, and making decisions. Everything about that we take for granted in daily life for me was falling apart. And when my eyes started to have problems, it was extremely scary. I was still pretty ignorant about how to handle it at the time. And I called my owner, Rick Hendrick, who owned my car, and I said, hey, I might need a relief driver this weekend on standby, just in case. And he said, you need to get your butt to the doctor today, now. And I'm thinking, wow, that's actually a really good idea. That's the thing, like, a person with a concussion is the last person that needs to be making these type of decisions for themselves. And so here I am again in 2016 visiting Micky in a much worse with a much worse condition than I had in 2012. And that's kind of, we spent 6 or 8 months sort of rehabbing this problem, quit driving entirely, maybe for good. And again, Micky saved my life a second time. And that's why I follow him everywhere I can to talk about what he does and how great it is. I want more people to have that opportunity to see Micky. So I took those iPhone notes and I got with a guy named Ryan McGee who worked with ESPN. He's covered NASCAR for many, many years. Me and him wrote a book called Racing to the Finish. And it came out this past year. And it chronicles everything from 2012 all the way up till today. And Micky's in the book as well, dropping medical knowledge about why I thought this way or why I may have made this decision that day and what the iPhone notes might mean. And the iPhone notes are sort of the rough draft, the basis of the book. And it takes you through all those incidents and how we got to where we were. And then how Micky, the expert that he is, fixed it. And so I'm just glad to be here today to be able to talk about how great a man he is, all the great things that he's done, and the people that he continues to help. Just last night when I was texting back and forth with Micky about coming here today and how excited we both were, he told me that the book has helped send a lot of people to see him. And that was the real reason why I wrote the book, was I wanted someone to hear this story and say, that's happening to me and this is where I need to go. Because when I first got hurt, I had no idea you should get help, and I did not know where to go get help. And that's what I think a lot of people that are dealing with these issues today, that's what they feel. And maybe this book might trigger someone to seek out Micky's help. And I thought we might have 1 or 2 people show up at his office a month. But he told me last night that they're averaging 5 to 6 patients a week that come in there specifically from reading the book. And I know you'd be surprised that he sees 5 to 6 patients a week, period. But he sees 24 patients a week with issues like these. And so the book's working. I'm glad that Micky's out there, and I know there's a lot of other people like Micky that are doing great things, but he's my guy. And so I'll let you take it from there.
Thanks, Dale. First of all, thanks for your comments. And secondly, about those iPhone notes.
Yeah.
Dale dropped those in my email and said, hey, you might want to read this. And for the first time, he'd been going through this for 4 years, and I sat down and read your iPhone notes, and I was scared, very scared for you and what you were going through. And you kept it so internal with this, and it just shows the power of competition. It shows the power of you are responsible for a lot of people. And I've always said you always put others before you, and your team and everything. There's just a lot of things that go into you being who you are. And I think that played a large role in you not wanting to stop that and get the help, and just sort of like you just wanted to push through this and compete, which I completely respect. But you were very scared and very sick when I saw you back in 2016, and I knew we had a lot of work to do. And then when we started our rehab with you, I mean, I went over the different types of concussions, and you now, from my lecture, understand the cognitive fatigue. I mean, this guy played through his injury for 3 years. It's not a good situation. There were significant oculomotor issues. There were significant vestibular issues with him. I wouldn't say migraine played a huge role with him, but the cognitive issues, cognitive fatigue was there. And there was also a lot of anxiety with Dale. The vestibular system, the same pathways in the brain that subserve that system, subserve the sympathetic nervous system. And so not only does the injury produce this physiologic-based anxiety and rumination and thinking and not turning thoughts off, but Dale's a very internal person. There's a lot going on inside his head, a lot. He's a very smart, analytic guy. And that machine was running hot when I saw you. And when you live like that chronically, it can produce such problems for someone to live their life as a human being, and that's where you were at. And then on top of all that, when Dale showed up to see me the second time in 2016, his manager, his sister, his wife, his team of people were with him. Dr. Petty was with him. And it was, everyone wanted the best for Dale. That was very clear. But there's also this incredible brand in everything that Dale has to live with. And keeping him out of the race car was torturous for you. Very difficult. And I actually talked about it upstairs with you today about, I read the book last night for the first time in a while. I read it when it came out and it was powerful for me then. I read it last night on the plane down. Very difficult reading that part from the point I saw you in 2016 for that 8-month period. If you haven't read the book, read it. It's very hard read at that point. That part of the case is very difficult to read for me because of what Dale went through and how incapacitating what he was feeling was in his daily life. But I always knew we were going to get you better. And Dale worked his tail off. And Amy pushed the heck out of him. And to do his, every single day, Dale would do his rehab and do all the things that we do to treat this. And it's a very active approach, ask Dale. We had Dale working out every day. We had him doing vestibular exercises, oculomotor exercises. We did medication. We had him do exposures to different busy environments and start playing basketball and all kinds of crazy stuff. And this is a guy who couldn't balance and couldn't be in a busy place, was having serious problems with his mood, etc. It's a very lonely place for you. But you kept grinding. I think Amy played a large role in that too. I do. And during the time I treated Dale, I mean, we treated him, he got married, walked down the aisle symptom-free, and then had a baby symptom-free. And the proudest thing as a clinician is knowing confidently that you're doing as well as you're doing right now. And it's pretty cool to see. And for him to share his story and to write a book about this, to help, it's very genuine. It is Dale trying to help others, which is kind of typical. And I don't know, what you've done is pretty powerful, and I really thank you for that.
No, I mean, I think that also we went back to the racetrack and we went back to racing. And that was one of the things that was often overlooked. A lot of people kind of forget, even, I guess because the performance on the track wasn't up to standard, but it was my final year. I had 1 year left on my contract, and I had a great relationship with my owner, and I wanted to honor that contract. And as bad as I was mentally and physically at the darkest times during the rehab, I would go to Micky and I would say, maybe I need to quit racing. I want to quit. And he said, I support that. I support that decision if that's what you want to do. And then I said, but as I start getting well, I'm going to want to race. Because we have such, short memories. And as soon as I did start feeling well, I called him up and said, Micky, I got some disturbing news for you. I feel like I want to go back to the racetrack and race. And he said, I support that decision. And I was like, how can you support that decision? And he said, because I can fix anything that happens to you. He's like, I feel confident in what I see every day, and I'm putting words in your mouth, but he said, I feel confident in what I see every day that you can go back to the racetrack and compete. And you're at no greater risk of injury than you were before your first concussion. But if anything does happen, that I can fix it. And so the decision really was mine, whether I wanted to take that risk. And I did. It just meant a lot to me to end it on my terms. And so that was another part of it that I think that is part of the success in the story, is that we did go back to the racetrack and we did compete and we had a great time doing it. And when I was injured, I wanted nothing to do with racing. It had put me in this place, and I was angry with it. And so to be able to reconcile with that, something that had been my passion my entire life, and to end on my terms and not be forced to quit, was great for me going forward for the rest of my life, to have that peace of mind. So,
And truth be told, Dale, I wanted you to get back in the race car because I wanted you to have that opportunity to end it on your own terms. And I do feel every bit as strong as what Dale just said. This is a treatable problem. Concussion's treatable. We can treat the problem. I really firmly believe that. There's a lot of misinformation out there about this injury, in my opinion, and I am confident if you had another injury, we'd be able to treat it, and I remain that way. And I think you went back and had a successful time.
yeah, I had a lot of fun. I did. I was able to finish my career the way I wanted to, and on top of that, a couple of things that I've learned. You talk about the injury being treatable. One of the things that's been profound for me in being able to go out and talk about this, I've had people reach out to me looking to be connected to Micky, and they have issues of their own. And I would assume that Micky only sees, when I met Micky works up there in Pittsburgh at the Steelers training facility. In my mind, I'm thinking, this guy works on the Steelers and only the Steelers. And I walked into his lobby, and there were kids, housewives, plumbers, carpenters, everybody and anybody was in there to see Micky, not just Steelers, not just athletes.
Can I tell a funny story about that?
Yeah.
So one day I'm sitting in the exam room, I get this knock on the door, and it's my fellow saying, Dale Earnhardt Jr. is sitting in the lobby. And I'm like, what? Like, he wasn't on my schedule for some strange reason. And Dale was sitting in the lobby next to the plumbers and the construction workers and the football player or whatever. Just sitting there kind of taking it all in, waiting your turn.
Yeah.
I think I made you wait for an hour or so.
Yep. When we would go through the physical part, I'm running on the treadmill next to the everyman, and sharing our stories and sharing our injuries and sharing. Those are the people you want to talk to when you have a concussion. You want to talk to people that are having concussions. You want to talk to people that have been healed from concussions. I would struggle with my eyes for months. My eyes wouldn't work the way I wanted them to. And I called Micky at home, and I'm like, Micky, I'm so mad right now. My eyes aren't getting better. Are you telling me the truth? Have you fixed this? And he said, yes, I have fixed it. How many times? Once? No, hundreds of times. And so, your doctor's always supposed to be positive, things are going to be well, but who you really want to talk to are the people who have had this injury and people that are dealing with this injury or actually been healed from it. But one of the things that I found most impressive is that not only can Micky heal the person like me who just went through this incident and just had this concussion, but he can heal and help people that have had issues for years. Someone who maybe was an athlete as a teenager or in their 20s, but now 20 years later is dealing with problems because of those concussions from their youth. He can help that person. That, to me, is the most surprising thing in all this, is that because in working with the book and going out and speaking, I've sent those people to Micky. And I'm like, man, that's going to be a tough job for Micky. That's going to be a tough job to help that guy whose concussion was many, many years ago. I mean, this is something that's been a part of his life. These problems, these hurdles, these daily struggles have been in his life for a decade or two. And man, I don't know if Micky can reach that deep into that person to fix it, and he does. I mean, the science and the tools that he has, they work.
The reality is that you can treat migraine, you can treat vestibular issues, you can treat ocular issues, you can treat anxiety. And a lot of patients that go through these things aren't aware that where the signal's coming from, and they're not aware there's treatments available. And that's why I think your book is so powerful, because a lot of people are reading that and understanding that those treatments are available. And there are a lot of great clinicians around the country doing this as well. And it's conferences like this where that information is disseminated, and there's very smart people out there that are going to apply the things we're teaching. And that's why, that's why things like this are so important.
Yeah.
I just want to invite people to ask some questions in our last few minutes. Dr. Collins is going to have to race off to a plane, catch a plane. Dale's going to stick around for a little bit for folks who might have questions later, but if you would like to address questions to both of them, this would be a great time. And feel free to introduce yourself, if everybody knows Jason.
Dale, my question to you is simply, you have a phenomenal platform. People know who you are. They follow you on social media. You're a legend in the racing world. Have you had an opportunity to engage with young racers that are up and coming in NASCAR and kind of share with them your experience? And what has the feedback been from them from the standpoint of listening and understanding the message that you're trying to share with them?
The individuals that I tend to spend most of my time with are their parents. And those are the ones that are really going to absorb the information and put it to use. We have, learned a lot over the last 5 to 10 years in terms of safety in our sport, and I have learned a tremendous amount in terms of how to handle the situations that I've been through. And so speaking to the parents is much easier to do, and for them to understand the signs and some of the protocol and some of the actions that need to be taken in certain situations is probably the first thing to do, to help the parents to sort of know how to keep an eye on their kid and what to look for. Because the funny thing, Micky may be able to speak on this, when I wrecked as a 20-year-old, the experience was completely different than when I would crash at 30 or 40. The way my body would respond or react to the same impact over those years was completely different. And I had terrible, hard crashes as a 22, 23-year-old, and those would not register symptoms. Because the body, I think, at that age is able to withstand much more. Also, as you go over, many years of wrecking and adding up all these impacts, you're doing that damage to the brain over that period of time. And so I think that for me to sit down with a kid and say, man, this is what you need to look for, I'm not sure they're going to know it when it's happening. I'm not sure that they're going to realize what's happening to them. I'm not sure they're going to understand that they're actually going through this because we're so resilient at that age. And so I think it's really important to speak to the parents, and they're typically around. They're typically involved in their child's career and very much, receptive to what I've been able to share with them.
I'm Phil Stutz. I'm from Wake Forest University. I'm actually an engineer, and my background before sports was more in vehicle safety, and so I'm really excited to hear from you and hear your story. It's extremely compelling. Well, my question is actually kind of more around the safety side of things. You talk repeatedly about impacts, and I know some of the developments of the Hans device and the safer barrier things that contributed so much to safety in NASCAR events. But I'm also interested in your take on sort of the environmental exposure variables. So when you're just riding around, there's a lot of vibration, and the head surround and the helmet's interacting with that. Did that contribute either to what was going on with you, and did you have to avoid that as well as the impacts?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a great question. And there's so I speak about this in the book. There's a bump at a particular racetrack, and just going around the racetrack and hitting that bump. So we have in our race cars, our helmet's kind of surrounded by this headrest to keep our head from literally, flying off our shoulders in an impact. And it's very hard foam that your head sort of reacts with in a crash. But also, as you're driving around the track, if you hit a bump, our cars on the racetrack don't drive like a street car. Street car has a nice, soft suspension to absorb these bumps in the road. Sometimes you might not even feel some of them real mild bumps on the street. But imagine driving through the worst pothole that you know of in town. That's kind of what a normal, small, insignificant bump on the racetrack feels like, because we race our cars with such rigid suspensions. We want them sealed to the ground for aerodynamic performance. And so that means that the suspension can hardly move. And so anytime you hit a bump, even the most smallest of bumps, you feel it through the whole car, and your head bounces off that headrest repeatedly. And there's some real vicious bumps out there. There's some real bad ones at a couple of different tracks. And I would get ill just going through that bump lap after lap after lap after lap. Think about like an offensive lineman playing, 2-a-day practices, then going through a game and so forth, and the repeated taps that really are kind of insignificant in their own singular moment, but repeatedly. That's kind of what I was dealing with. I was already ill. I'd already been going through wrecks and races that had kind of had my brain in a very compromised state. And then to go out there on those tracks with those very hard bumps would make me nauseous, we were at one particular practice, and I came in the pits and I told my team, I said, I need 30 minutes to get cleared up. I'm in a fog because of how rough this car is over this particular bump. And so that was concerning for sure. And I think that's, that's why I retired, because I can't withstand, I don't want to go through the rigors of an entire season, the potential of crashing. Micky told me, he said, I can fix it, but I don't want to see him again. Not there, not in that shape. And so, I think that their wear and tear, the typical wear and tear on a race car driver cannot.
I found it so fascinating when we had this conversation, Dale, about retiring and all that stuff, and I think truly you didn't want to go through it again.
Yeah.
We as people that treat this injury every day talk about the potential long-term problems and whatever those are. We don't know what those are, frankly. But that really wasn't it for you. It was about the hell you went through with this is not something you wanted to repeat.
No, I didn't. I knew that if I thought I could get through that 1 year, but if I tried to run another 5 or 10 years, I was going to the well too many times, and I would probably be back to see Micky again, because the racing crashes are just so violent, and there's no way to avoid some of them, and so to be able to finish that year and close the book was what I wanted to do.
I want us to thank both of these men very much. We're out of time, unfortunately. Dale will be here for a few minutes for further questions, but Dr. Collins, he's going to have to get on a plane.
Thank you, buddy.
Thank you both.
Anything to say?
Thank you. Let's, not sure who came up next, but.
Hi, my name is Martha Holzer. I'm a photographer, and I've also been treated at the Gefeller Center. I'm a former collegiate athlete at Carolina and Alabama. My sister was an Olympic swimmer, and I had a head-on collision when I was 24. Woman decided to cross over a WO line. We hit head-on in my lane, going 50-55 into one another. And in 2016, I sustained my second concussion and my third in 2018 being rear-ended. My question for you is, I think what all of you are doing here is incredible, but what can we do to try and get more awareness within our local practices, to other school kids, to other people within the community about where to go and seek treatment, how to get the right kind of treatment, I spent months trying to get someone to recognize that my vision wasn't correct. I've now put together a photography project that I'm super excited about that showcases what it was like through my eye, what it was like looking out of a 3D movie for over 9 months. And I just want to be able to help other people. And I'm wondering what you've been able to do and experience to try and do outreach to other groups, to try and build your awareness throughout the states to smaller practices and to help others realize there is a light at the end of the tunnel with concussions. Thanks.
Yeah, I go with Micky to speak at many events. We're going to Ohio State here in a month or so. And so when I had some visual issues as well, and they're the most frightening. That was the most frightening part of what I experienced. I mean, obviously not being able to balance yourself is very frightening. But when you take your eyes for granted, that you're gonna wake up every day and they're just gonna work perfectly. We understand that maybe our vision's not gonna be great all our lives, but you just assume that you're gonna have that luxury all your life. And you wake up one day and they don't work. Whatever the symptom is, as you described yours, when that's taken away from you, it's extremely scary. And the fear, I think, is that this is permanent. Is this what life is for me for the rest of my life? And so that, to go to Micky, to go see Micky and get that fixed, the fact that he fixed that. I told you I would call him in the middle of the night, so angry that I've been going months without this issue even changing. When he fixed it, it made me want to devote all my time to spreading his message and spreading what he's able to do, how he can help people. Because like you, I mean, when I was first injured, I was going to see Dr. Petty. He was kind of the racing doctor. I didn't know whether he was going to be able to understand what I was going to describe to him. I didn't know whether he would be able to fix it. I was hopeless. I was hopeless that I was going to be well. And so I think that through my experience, I'm devoted to helping people learn that Micky's out there. And Micky's a metaphor for, all those doctors out there across this country that are understanding how to treat this injury and how they treat it today. Like Micky will tell you, if he were here, the way we treated it in 2012 was not the same way we treated it in 2016. And to tell people that is happening. They used to say when you had a concussion, you needed to go, be in a dark room and shut everything off and don't watch TV, put away your cell phone, just shut your brain down. And that was how we would treat the concussion in 2012. In 2016, it was exposure. It was pushing yourself into environments that would trip the system and freak you out. Wherever you could go to get the worst symptoms, you would push yourself into those environments. And it's like stretching a muscle and training the brain to handle those environments and deal with those problems. And it's aggressive and it's terrible to experience, but that's the approach today. And so it's important that we share with everyone that will listen, not only where to get this help, that it's available and it works, but that it's always changing. Not only do we need to educate the everyman that might encounter the concussion, we also have to educate trainers, coaches, doctors on how the science is evolving. Because we're really living in the moment where we're truly understanding what concussions can do to people and how to fix them. We're living in this time. This isn't stuff from 40 years ago that we're using. These are tools and knowledge that we learned yesterday that we're helping people with. And it's important that we stay on top of, not only, helping people understand where to get help, but the people that are responsible for these kids at these practices or trainers and coaches and so forth, they need to know and understand the science as it's changing.
Thank you. We're going to have maybe 2 more quick questions, and then we'll sort of transition to the next part of the program, but I believe if you're able to
I'm great.
stick around,
Yeah.
we'll talk back there. Also, just
Till y'all get tired of me.
No, but I really quickly would like to acknowledge 2 NASCAR fellow legends who are with us today. Hermie Sadler is here. Thank you for being here. And I'd also like to acknowledge Mr. Warwick Scott. Warwick Scott is the grandson of Wendell Scott, a NASCAR Hall of Fame driver and the first African American to be inducted into the NASCAR Hall of Fame. So we're grateful for them being here. Make sure y'all know what kind of world we're in. It's pretty exciting. So please.
Hi, Dale. Chris Eckersley. I'm an engineer at engineer at Duke University. I was just first of all, thank you for sharing your story and coming and talk with us. By the end of your book, you seem to be pretty optimistic and in a good spot with respect to your neurological health. And I was wondering if you could specifically comment on your outlook for your long-term neurological health, and then also what advice you would give someone that's possibly avoiding athletics or something that is worried about what it might play in their long-term neurological health.
Yeah, the message that I share with Micky is that we don't have to avoid doing the things that we love. We just need to approach it in a manner as safe as possible, but also instead of trying to medicate yourself, trying to heal yourself, or trying to get from one injury to the next, you got to respond the first time. That was my mistake, is that I would handle this myself. And I piled up injury after injury after injury and was doing big damage to my brain. And what we got to change the culture. When that athlete's on the practice field and has a problem, getting him to speak up then, not wait to see if it goes away or try to play through it or at least get through the next game. We've got to change that culture. And that will improve that long-term health. Now, as far as my own concerns, I certainly have had days where I worried about what life will be like for me as I go down the road into my 60s, 70s, and 80s. And I got married and I had a little girl. And I think that the further I get removed from my experience in 2016, the more I'm able to enjoy what I have and enjoy where I am today and what I'm involved in that moment. And I don't know whether this is exactly the right way to think about it, but what if I spent every day worrying about my long-term health to never experience any problems? So I went through some struggles with that for a while, and you can certainly find literature that will frighten you. But I chose as an individual to enjoy what I have today, what I'm doing now, and when I have problems in the future, if I have problems in the future, I know who to call. And when I talked about it a moment ago with the science changing every day, I also have the confidence that not only will we be able to help people get through their concussion symptoms, but we'll be able to help people who are suffering long-term effects. And that's my hope and that's my wish, and that keeps me pretty happy. Thank you.
Let's do one more question. Thank you.
Hey Dale, my name is Kelsey Rice. I am an athletic trainer at Wake Forest Baptist, and then my dad is Chris Rice in the Xfinity Series. So I'm on cloud 9 right now. My question for you is, the more that we learn about concussions, has NASCAR implemented any kind of protocol after you So when you get in a wreck in the race car, what kind of protocols do they follow in the info care center to try and keep this from happening to other drivers?
That's a great question. When I had my problems in 2016, NASCAR adopted the use of the impact test, which is a test that Micky actually helped write. It's about a 30 to 40 minute process. It's very thorough, and basically you take the impact test when you're well, and that's your baseline. It's not an A and B multiple choice. It's not a grade of good and bad. It just basically measures your speed of memory, how long you retain memory, all type reaction time, things like that. And it's very, very complex and thorough. And when you get hurt, or if you think you may be hurt, you can take this test and it will show the deficiencies wherever the brain may be injured. And it also not only helps, it's one tool in the box to help diagnose a concussion. And also it helps guys like Micky understand what part of the brain may be struggling and how to find the way to treat that concussion. And so that is something that is required for drivers to do. You cannot start a season in NASCAR without a valid impact test. And anytime a driver is involved in a crash, there's a neurosurgeon in the infield medical center. That used to not be the case until over the last year or two. But now they have a neurosurgeon on premises, and he sees every driver that's in an impact. And so they're able to see that driver and spend some time with them and run them through a little bit of a few tests of their own to be able to understand whether this driver is dealing with any problems or not. That impact test is always on the shelf as well for that driver to take either at the racetrack or Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday later that week to see if that driver is dealing with any problems. So there's been, and that's just a few things that's been implemented, and I feel great about NASCAR's approach to it, and NASCAR trying to, the drivers need to be protected from themselves. I'm an obvious case of that, or we would not make the best decisions. And it should never be in the driver's hands. They should never have any kind of input on the protocol, because a concussed person does not need to be making any kind of decisions for themselves. That needs to be handled by a neurosurgeon or a doctor in their presence. And so I feel great about where we are today with that.
Thank you, Dale.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everyone.